While repairing my car, the mechanic suddenly became pale, as if he had seen a ghost, and whispered, "Don't get on the steering wheel. It's a trap." At that moment, I received a message from my son. "Dad, hurry up." You won't believe what my son had in mind. Before continuing, please subscribe to the channel and tell us from where you are listening in the comments. The phone rang at 5:15 on a Monday, early in March. I had been sitting in my living room for almost an hour, watching the light fade through the window, listening to the refrigerator hum its lonely song in the kitchen. 3 months. That was what had passed since David left this house. Since his fist hit the kitchen table hard enough to make the living room tremble. Since Regina's cold eyes followed me to the door as if I were something she had taken off her shoe. When her name appeared on the screen, my heart beat my ribs like something trapped. "Dad?" His voice came warm, almost apologizing, softer than I had heard it in years. "Regina and I have been talking. We miss you. Come to dinner tonight. She's making a meatloaf, your favorite, the one with the mashed potatoes you like." I should have been skeptical. Any reasonable person would have been. But I was not reasonable at that time. I was just a 63-year-old man, tired of silence, tired of eating frozen dinners alone on a table for 4 from when Isabel lived, when David was young and still looked at me as if I knew things that were worth knowing, as if I were someone worthy of respect. "I would love to, son," I said. Perhaps too fast, too anxious. "What time should I be there?" "At 7 o'clock. Don't be late. Everything will be ready and waiting for you." After hanging up, I sat down holding the phone with both hands, feeling something similar to the relief of traveling through my body in waves. My chest felt lighter than it had felt in months. Then the memory arose, clear and uninvited. David's face reddened, the veins marked on his neck, the saliva flying when he shouted, $35,000, that's nothing for you. You are sitting on retirement accounts, and the house and everything, and I am your son." His voice had been rough, desperate, with a touch of something uglier. "I'm drowning here, and you're hoarding money like a miserable old man." I had kept calm. Decades of auditing state budgets taught me that, how to keep my face neutral when someone was lying to me, stealing, cooking books. "David, I can't give you that amount of money for something you can't even explain clearly. You said investment opportunity, but you don't tell me what it is. If you need help, real help, let's sit down with real numbers, real plans. I'm your son. That money will be mine someday anyway. Why not help me now when I really need it?" That was what had frozen me inside, not anger, but the acquired right. The assumption that my life, my savings, everything I had worked for was just an inheritance that he was waiting to collect, had gone furious, hitting the frame of the door with his shoulders strong enough to leave a mark that he had not yet repaired. Regina had stayed on the threshold, her expression unreadable, but far from being warm. She had not said a word. She just looked at me with those flat eyes and followed him to his car. Apart from the memory, I got up from the sofa where I had worn a bruise on the cushions for the last few months, and I went to the shower. My son had called. My son loved me there. Perhaps the family could heal after all. Perhaps I had been too rigid, too much of an auditor and not enough of a father. At 6 o'clock, I was dressed in a clean blue button shirt that Isabel had bought me years ago. Keys in hand, wallet in the back pocket. The garage smelled of concrete dust and old engine oil. Tools that I barely knew how to use hung from a pegboard that my neighbor had helped me install. I got in my 2019 sedan. Reliable, practical. The type of car that a retired auditor drives. I turned the key. The starter engine sounded, strong and normal. I turned as I always did. But the engine didn't start. I tried again, pumping the accelerator pedal. Same result. The dashboard lit up perfectly. The battery was fine. The gas indicator showed 3/4 of a tank. I opened the hood. I looked at the engine as if I could explain it to myself. Nothing seemed obviously wrong. But of course, I had never been good at mechanical things. Numbers, budgets, calculation sheets, I did understand that. The engines were a foreign language. My phone vibrated in my pocket. David. Dad, we're waiting. Don't be late. Frustration climbed up my spine like something with claws. I didn't want to disappoint him. Not now. Not when we were finally reconnecting after 3 months of silence that had felt like 3 years. I called a tow service. I gave them the address and walked from one side to the other at my driveway while the operator promised 20 minutes. The asphalt was cracked under my feet, spreading scars of damage. Another thing I had intended to fix since Isabel died. But I never did. Everything around me was slowly crumbling. Another message vibrated. Everything is ready. I wrote an explanation about the car. I deleted it because it sounded like an excuse. I wrote it again. My hands were shaking slightly. A tremor that I had noticed more recently. Age, probably. Stress. When the tow truck finally arrived, 40 minutes later, I got in the cab and gave the driver the instructions for Robert's auto shop, the only place I knew that could be open at this time of the evening. The street where I had taught David to ride a bicycle. I really need to get to a place tonight. It's important. All the time. Traveling in that truck with my sedan, hooked behind like a corpse being dragged. A thought was spinning in my head in an endless loop. A 3-month silence, broken by an invitation to dinner. I should be skeptical, but I am not. I'm just tired of being alone in this house, where every room reminds me of Isabel. Tired of wondering if I was too hard on him. If I should have given him the money without asking questions. He's my son. My only son. The only family I have left in this world. If he's reaching out, I have to answer. I have to believe that there is still something worth saving between us. The tow truck entered Robert's auto shop at exactly 7 o'clock. The lights shone inside the workshop, rough and industrial. A man with an oil-stained overall was cleaning his hands on a red rag, watching us enter. The driver released my sedan from the platform with a mechanical moan and a metal-on-metal scream. I got out of the cab, my knees protesting after being seated, and I approached the mechanic. "Robert?" I called for my car. "It's urgent. I need to get to a place tonight. My son is waiting for me." Robert sat down slowly, studying the sedan. "Let me put it on the lift. Take a good look at it." He pointed to a worn-out door. "There's coffee in the waiting room if you want. It may be old, but it's hot." I won't be long. The waiting room smelled of burnt coffee and rubber. Cracked plastic chairs bordered a wall through a scratched window. I could see Robert positioning my car on the lift. I sat down and took out my phone. 7:23. David. "Dad, where are you?" 5 minutes later. "The food is getting cold." Later. "We are waiting for you." Each message felt more insistent, demanding. I wrote apologies. I tried to explain. My fingers felt clumsy on the screen. 25 minutes dragged on. I saw Robert working under the lift, methodical and focused. Then he straightened up quickly. And even through the window, I could see that something was wrong. The color had disappeared from his face. He stayed there, looking at something under my car. Then he walked to the waiting room. When he opened the door, his hands trembled. "Mr. Vargas." His voice was tense. "He needs to see this. Right now." I followed him to the workshop. The ceiling lights were rough, making everything look exposed. Robert pointed his flashlight at the brake lines. Even I could see it. A clean cut, deliberate, no wear or damage. Someone had cut the line. "Someone did this," said Robert in a low voice. "This was not an accident. Someone wanted you to crash, to die." He moved the light beam to the engine sensor. "They sabotaged this too. The engine would have started eventually. It would have taken him a few miles down the road. Then it would have failed on the highway when it was at 60, 70, and when he stepped on the brakes. It didn't end. I didn't need to do it." My phone vibrated. I took it out with numb fingers. "David. Dad. Hurry up." The word returned my gaze. "Hurry up. What for? To die on the main road without brakes?" A memory arose sharp. Sunday night, 2:30 in the morning. A sound from the garage, a metallic scraping. I had stayed there listening. I decided it was nothing. Cats. Wind. But David had an extra key. David knew that he kept the car in the garage. David. The workshop leaned. I leaned against the fender. I breathed through my nose. 30 years of auditing were activated, keeping my face neutral when discovering a fraud. This was just another form of robbery. Someone trying to steal my life. "Robert, I need you to document everything," I said firmly. "Photographs of both sabotage points. Written report. Do not touch anything else. Leave it exactly as you found it." Robert stared at me. "Mr. Vargas, we have to call the police. This is attempted murder. Whoever did this." "I know what it is," I interrupted in a low voice. "And I will take care of it. But first, complete documentation. Do you know who has access to your garage?" Robert's voice became cautious, suspicious. My fingers felt clumsy on the screen. 25 minutes dragged on. I saw Robert work below the lift, methodical and concentrated. Then he straightened up fast. And even through the window, I could see that something was wrong. The color had disappeared from his face. He stayed there, looking at something under my car. Then he walked to the waiting room. When he opened the door, his hands trembled. "Mr. Vargas," his voice was tense. "You need to see this. Right now." I followed him to the workshop. I told him no. Was that when he decided? Or before, when Isabel died and he realized that he still did not inherit because I was still alive? "How long has my son been planning to kill his own father?" I wrote. "Mechanical problems." "I won't arrive tonight. I'm sorry." His response arrived in seconds. "When can you come?" That speed told me everything. He was waiting. Both were waiting at that table, wondering why their plan had failed. "I will let you know." Robert came out with printed photographs and handwritten notes. "What do you want me to do with this?" I took the documentation, folded it into my jacket pocket. The paper crunched against my chest. "I need to rent a car. Any place nearby still open?" He gave me an address of a rental agency 3 blocks away. I opened my ride-sharing application, 8 o'clock 5 minutes, 6 minutes away. The phone vibrated once more. "David? Dad?" My thumb hovered over the keyboard. I could see it all now, the complete image that an auditor should have detected. The invitation was not a reconciliation. It was an execution. Making me get in the car, taking me to the highway, letting the sabotage work, an accident, a tragedy. They would inherit everything: house, savings, life insurance, clean and simple. I closed the application without responding. The ride was 2 minutes away. I had a place to go. Someone to see? David was going to wait. Just as I had waited 3 months for a call that I never should have answered. Just as he had been waiting for me to die on the highway tonight. But I was not dead. And now I knew exactly who had tried to kill me. The documentation felt heavy in my pocket while the headlights swept the parking lot. My ride had arrived. I got in the back seat. I gave the driver the address of the car rental agency, and I looked out the window at the passing streetlights. My reflection returned my gaze. A 63-year-old man who had just discovered that his son wanted him dead. The auditor in me was already working, cataloging evidence, building a case. But under that professional calm, something else was growing. Something cold and patient. Something that knew how to wait, how to plan, how to find the weak points in someone's defenses. David had made a mistake tonight. He had failed to kill me. And now I had time to think, time to plan, time to make sure he paid for what he had tried to do. The ride-sharing application dropped me at the car rental agency 3 blocks from Robert's shop. The fluorescent lights hummed high up while a young female employee processed my license and credit card. Barely looking up from her screen, 20 minutes later, I was sitting at the wheel of a silver sedan that smelled of fake pine and strangers. My phone lay on the passenger seat with the screen dark. David's messages were there, unread, unanswered, burning like accusations that I was not ready to face. I joined the main road heading north. My son's house was 30 minutes away, through the suburban expansion and the traffic lights. My hands were firm on the wheel, but my mind was working overtime, making calculations as I had done for 40 years in the government audit offices. Clear motive. My estate was worth more than $600,000. The house in our neighborhood was valued at $480,000 last year. Savings accounts, retirement funds, life insurance policy for $100,000 that I had maintained since David was born. Everything for him when I died, except that he was not supposed to die of old age. He was supposed to die on Monday night on the main road when my brakes failed at 60 miles per hour. Means equally clear. David had the spare key to my house. I had given it to him years ago when I still trusted him. When he was someone who would check on me if I didn't answer the phone. He knew my schedule. He knew that he kept the car in the garage. He knew that the latch of that side door had been broken since winter. Opportunity? This past weekend. On Saturday, I was at the grocery store for 2 hours. On Sunday morning at the farmer's market. At any time he could have slipped in, do the job, slip away. The metallic scraping at 2:30. Sunday morning. That must have been him leaving. Closing the door too hard. Making noise that he thought I would not hear. The pieces fit with mathematical precision. Every data point fit. A traffic light turned red. I stopped. I looked at it without really seeing the color. 3 months ago. That discussion in my kitchen was not just about money. It was a threat that I had been too stupid or too hopeful to recognize. David's voice echoed in my memory, louder now. He is sitting on a pile of money while I drown in debt. The kitchen table jumping under his fist, and behind him, Regina with her arms crossed and her face carved in ice. No attempt to calm him, no mediation. Just cold calculation in those flat eyes. Then David's farewell words. It will be all ours anyway. Not mine, ours. Present tense, not future. Not talking about inheritance decades later. Talking about this week, this month. I had heard it then, but I filtered it through the assumptions of a father. I should have been listening like an auditor. The streets of David's neighborhood were quiet when I arrived just after 9. Modest 2-story houses from the 1980s bordered both sides, most with the lights dimmed for the night. I found David's house halfway down the street, every window lit as if it were on display. I parked around the corner where I could see his living room. But they couldn't see the car. I took out the small notebook that I had carried for 30 years. I went to a clean page. I wrote down the time. Old habits. Through the window, David was pacing, with the phone pressed against his ear. Regina was next to the dining room table, gesticulating abruptly. Even from here I could read the frustration in her posture. Quick movements, pointing him, to the phone, shaking her head. I adjusted the rearview mirror. I settled down to observe. My phone remained in my pocket. 20 minutes passed. The scene inside did not change much. David checking his phone obsessively, Regina increasingly agitated. But it was what I did not see that confirmed everything. There was no dinner on the dining room table, no meatloaf, no mashed potatoes, no reconciliation meal. Instead, there were papers spread over the surface in neat piles. Even from outside, I recognized the format. Legal-sized documents, several pages, of the type that I had reviewed thousands of times. Succession documents, property transfer documents. They were not preparing dinner. They were preparing to inherit. The food was fiction. The forms were ready and waiting for the news of my death. I took photos through the window with my phone. Evidence, documentation, the auditor's instinct to record everything. David checked his phone again, showed the screen to Regina. She raised her hands, said something sharp. He responded defensively. They were waiting for a call from the police, from a hospital, from someone who reported an accident. They were waiting for the confirmation that their plan had worked. My hands tightened on the steering wheel until my knuckles hurt. This was my son, the child I had taught to ride a bicycle, to throw a baseball, to balance a checkbook. The man I had helped in college, at his wedding, in the first years when money was scarce. And he had been in my garage 2 nights ago with a blade in his hand, methodically cutting the brake lines while I slept upstairs. Not with rage, not with passion, with premeditation and paperwork. The man I had raised no longer existed. Perhaps he never did. I wrote in my notebook, 8:47 at night, David strolling. Active phone, controlling Regina. Frustrated. Papers on the table, legal documents, state transfer format. No preparations for dinner, waiting for death notification. Professional detachment. That is what helped me overcome 40 years of finding embezzlement, fraud, theft. Please answer. Worried. The word floated in the car like poisonous gas. I took the exit toward my house, toward the house with the garage where David had been, with hatred and a cutting tool, breaking more than brake lines. The phone vibrated again. This time, I did not look. I had work to do. Planning, preparation, strategy. My son wanted to play with the inheritance? Good. But I had written the rules for 40 years, and I was about to teach him exactly what happens when you try to scam an auditor. My house was dark when I entered the entrance near 10 o'clock. I sat in the rented car for a long moment, looking at the structure that I had called home for 30 years. The garage where David had betrayed me. The back porch where I had pushed his tire swing. The second-floor window of his childhood room. Everything felt contaminated now. I got out. I locked the car. I entered through the front door. I did not turn on the lights. I walked in the darkness to the kitchen. And I sat at the table where David's fist had made the salt shaker dance 3 months ago. Then I began to think. The hours passed slowly. I filled pages of the notebook with analysis, asset columns, vulnerabilities, required actions. I traced lines connecting concepts. I surrounded keywords. This was what I had done for 4 decades. Tracking money, finding the weakness, building the case. At dawn, I had a frame. At 7 o'clock in the morning on Tuesday, I had a plan. I showered. I put on a clean shirt and pants, an armor for the day ahead. Then I lifted my phone. David had sent 12 messages overnight, each one sounding more worried than the previous one. Dad, please answer. I'm really worried. Should I go see you? I elaborated my response with surgical precision. I'm sorry, son. The car broke down seriously. I had to leave it at the shop. Let's reschedule the scene. 3 points immediately appeared. They disappeared. They appeared again. David had been waiting, looking at his phone. Of course. Dad, the main thing is that you're fine. I read it twice. I heard the falsehood like an incorrect note. The main thing is that you're fine. No, David. The main thing was supposed to be that I was dead on the main road with failed brakes. But I keep breathing. And now you are struggling. At 9 o'clock, I sat in the office of the lawyer Marcus Diaz downtown. He was 44 years old, sharp eyes, with degrees in MARC8 CS covering a wall. His reputation in handling complex succession cases was the reason I had chosen him. I did not mention the attempted murder. Not yet. I just asked about changing a will, inheritance law, disinheriting beneficiaries. Diaz explained the process. He took notes. Then he looked up. Quite simple, Mr. Vargas. You can disinherit anyone if you make your intentions clear in the document. But families can contest. What if the person I am disinheriting tried to hurt me? I interrupted in a low voice. To obtain the inheritance faster. His pen stopped moving. That is a different conversation, Mr. Vargas. That is a very different conversation. The law here is clear about it. If someone tries to harm you for financial gain, they are automatically disqualified from the inheritance. And we are talking about serious felony charges, 10 to 20 years. I need options, I said. Legal options, before making formal accusations. He studied my face. How sure are you? Gathering evidence now. The police station was next. Detective Rodriguez was middle-aged, with tired eyes and coffee stains on his tie. I presented Robert's photos, his written statement, my timeline documentation. Rodriguez listened. He took notes. But his expression remained cautious. Mr. Vargas, I understand that this is frightening. But without proof of who accessed your garage, who really did the cut? Do you have security cameras? Witnesses? No, he sighed. We will open a report. We will send an officer to document the vehicle, but I am honest with you. Without more evidence. This is property damage, maybe vehicular attempted homicide. If we can connect someone. Do you have suspicions? I looked him in the eyes. I need to be sure before accusing anyone. But I'm working on it. Sunset found me on my back porch, exhausted but too altered to rest. A movement caught my attention. My neighbor, Helen, approaching through the twilight with 2 cups in her hands. She was 61 years old. Silver hair with soft features but intelligent eyes that I had never really noticed. I saw your lights on all night, she said without preamble. You've been out all day. Arthur, what's wrong? Something in her frankness broke my defenses. I told her, carefully observing for judgment. She left her tea. 4 years ago, my daughter tried to have me declared incompetent. She wanted my house, my savings. She said I was senile, that I was dangerous to myself. She had doctors lined up, paperwork ready. Her eyes met mine. I understand what you're feeling. The betrayal, the disbelief that your own son could. She didn't finish. She didn't need to. When my daughter did what she did, Helen continued, I wanted to pretend it wasn't happening. I wanted to believe that she was just wrong, not malicious. She leaned forward. But Arthur, when someone shows you who they are, believe them. Especially family. They know exactly what they are doing. He's my only son, I said, my voice cracking for the first time. How? You protect yourself. And you make sure he faces the consequences. Or he'll try again. The words floated between us in the cooling air. I spent 40 years exposing frauds, I said finally, following money trails, finding the truth in numbers. But I never thought. He's my son. I changed his diapers. I taught him to ride a bicycle. And now I'm building a case against him as if he were just another file number. Helen took my hand. He stopped being just your son when he cut those brake lines. You are not betraying him. He betrayed you. Remember that. Midnight was approaching. Helen got up to leave. She stopped on the porch steps. I know what the next few days will be like. The doubt. The second guesses. Wondering if you're exaggerating. She turned. You're not. Trust your instincts. Trust the evidence. And if you need anything, someone to talk to, someone to remind you why you're doing this. I'm 3 houses away. Anytime. I watched her disappear into the darkness, a small figure carrying more strength than I had imagined. My phone vibrated. David. Dad. When do we reschedule? I wrote. I will let you know. I have some things to attend to first. His response was immediate. Like what? Like how to protect myself from you. How to change my will. How to make sure you never receive a penny of what you tried to kill me to get. But I wrote, just personal matters. We'll talk soon. I turned off the phone completely. Inside, I went up the stairs to my room for the first time in 36 hours. The notebook was on my nightstand, open on tomorrow's page. 3 items in careful writing. 1. Change locks. 2. Security cameras. 3. New will. Disinherit David. Reason clearly stated. I closed my eyes. Sleep finally arrived. Dreamless and dark, Wednesday morning arrived with unexpected clarity. Sunlight poured through my bedroom window. The first real sleep I had since Monday night. The notebook was still on my nightstand, the action items returning my gaze like a mission report. I showered, I got dressed, I prepared coffee. My phone was on the counter where I had left it off. When I turned it on, 3 messages appeared. David, sent an hour ago. Dad, are you there? I took a sip of coffee. I made him wait. Power comes from patience. The phone rang in the middle of the morning. David's voice came warm, worried. So perfectly acted that I almost admired it. Dad, how about we have that dinner tomorrow, Thursday? Regina and I really want to see you. I kept my tone light. Tomorrow is difficult, son. How about Friday? That gives me time to resolve this car situation. I heard something in his voice then, anxiety bordering on desperation. Friday works. Friday is perfect. After hanging up, I looked at my reflection in the kitchen window. Playing the oblivious father was harder than expected, but necessary. Helen arrived late in the morning, and we drove together to Marcus Diaz's office. This time, the conversation was different. Diaz spread papers over his mahogany desk. Will templates, summaries of inheritance laws, criminal statutes. If we are going to do this, he said, looking at both of us, we must be thorough. Changing the will protects your assets. But if David tries again, we need evidence for criminal charges. Helen leaned forward. I used to work with private investigators when I practiced family law. We could install security cameras in Arthur's garage if David tries to access again. Diaz nodded slowly. That would give us attempted robbery at least. Conspiracy to commit murder, and we can prove the intention. I signed the new will papers with firm strokes. Everything for the City Children's Hospital Foundation. David receives $1. The reason simply stated, for causes known to my son. The afternoon brought Charles Mendoza, a private investigator whom Helen knew. He was 48 years old. He was quiet. He carried a black equipment bag. In my garage, he installed 2 HD cameras, one over the main door, another covering the workbench where my sedan now sat. Returned from Robert's shop. Activated by movement, Mendoza explained. Infrared for night vision. Cloud storage so that the images cannot be destroyed. If someone enters here, we will have video. Timestamps. Everything. 3 hours. Cost. $1,200. I wrote the check without hesitation. Cheaper than a funeral. A locksmith arrived later. He changed all my locks. Front, back, garage side entrance. New keys, new deadbolts. $380. Physical security mattered. But the message I sent next had real weight. I sent a text message to David. Son, I found that spare key you left here years ago. Do you want me to return it? 3 points appeared. They disappeared. They appeared again. David was struggling with his answer. Finally. No, Dad. Keep it. I smiled grimly. He knew that the spare key was how he had entered on Sunday night. I knew that I had just told him that I had discovered the access point. Now he knew that I was paying attention, even if he didn't realize how much. The evening settled soft and warm. Helen invited me to her porch. We sat in wooden chairs that creaked comfortably, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. Neither of us spoke for a long time. Finally, Helen reached out and took mine. Her palm was warm, slightly rough from gardening. You are not alone in this, she said softly. I looked at our united hands, mine tanned and stained by age, hers smaller but equally marked by the years. I haven't felt so connected with another person in a long time, I admitted. Since before my wife passed away. I thought that part of life was over. Helen gently squeezed. Perhaps it's just starting again, under the worst circumstances, but starting after all. We stayed seated like that while the darkness completed its arrival. Two people who had been betrayed by their children, finding unexpected comfort in each other. The stars multiplied high up. Helen's porch light was off, giving us privacy. A dog barked once down the street, then fell silent. I realized the warmth of her hand, the subtle scent of lavender soap, the comforting weight of her presence. I should leave, I said, without moving. Let you rest a little. She turned to look at me, her face barely visible in the starlight. Or could you stay a little longer? I'm not tired. Me neither. Tired of fighting, maybe. Tired of being alone, certainly, but not sleepy. We remained seated as the night deepened. When I finally got up to leave, she walked me to her garden gate. On Friday, she said, when you go to that dinner with David, be careful. The cameras are working. The will has changed. I'll be fine. She touched my arm. I wasn't talking about physical safety. I meant emotionally. Facing him. Pretending everything is normal. That's going to be harder than you think. She was right. I knew she was right. But Friday would arrive, ready or not. Thursday morning brought the official confirmation. Marcus Diaz called at 9:30. It's done, he said without preamble. Your new will is executed, notarized, and recorded. I have placed a copy in my office safe, and I am sending another to your bank's safe deposit box today. I stood in my kitchen, the phone pressed against my ear, feeling something change inside me. Not exactly peace, but a kind of structural safety, like a building finally screwed to its foundation. Thank you, Marcus. One more thing. The will explicitly states the reason for the disinheritance, for causes known to my son. When this comes to light, and eventually it will, that phrase tells the world that you had specific reasons. It protects against challenges. After the call ended, I served a second cup of coffee and considered my next move. Late in the morning, I called David. I kept my tone casual, rambling. the way an older man might talk about mundane concerns. "Son, I've been thinking. This house is becoming too much for me. Too many rooms. Too much garden work. I met with a financial advisor yesterday about selling. Maybe moving to one of those nice senior living communities. Activities, maintenance included." David interrupted, voice tense. "Dad, why would you sell? The house is beautiful. It's your home." I continued as if I hadn't heard the attention. "I could get maybe $450,000 for it. Possibly $500,000 if the market is good. That would allow me to live comfortably. Maybe take some trips, Europe, Alaska. I've always wanted to travel." I heard him breathe on the other side. I could almost feel the panic transmitting through the line. "We should talk about this," David said carefully. "At tomorrow's dinner, before you make any decisions." "Perfect." That afternoon, my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered, and Regina's voice came through. The first time she had called me directly in months. Her tone dripped artificial sweetness. "Arthur, David mentioned that you're thinking of selling the house. I wanted to reach out. You know I work in real estate. I could handle the sale for you, get you the absolute best price. Family discount on the commission, of course." I played along, old and confident. "That's kind of you, Regina. I will certainly consider it," she pressed. "These senior communities can be expensive. You want to make sure you're not draining your savings too quickly. Maybe we could sit down, look at your finances together." There it was. She wanted to see my complete financial picture. She wanted to know how much they were losing due to my continued survival. "I'll think about it," I said softly. "We'll talk tomorrow. At dinner." When I hung up, I was smiling. Not with warmth, but with grim satisfaction. The afternoon brought a messenger to my door. Certified mail from Diaz's office. Copies of the new will. Notarized certificates. Confirmation of registration. I read them carefully. Every paragraph reinforced the same message. David receives $1, the rest to charity. Reasons stated for legal protection. I drove to my bank. I placed the documents in my safe deposit box next to Isabel's jewelry and the house deed. The vault was cool, quiet, secure. When the metal door clicked shut, I felt the satisfaction of a strategic position, fortified. That night, I explained the day's events to Helen while we drank tea at my kitchen table. She listened with the careful attention of someone who understands legal maneuvers. "Regina called you directly," she said, stirring honey into her cup. "That's desperation. They know something has changed, but they don't know what. They are struggling." I nodded. "Tomorrow's dinner is going to be interesting." Helen put down the spoon. She looked at me seriously. "Can you do it? Sit across from them, eat their food, have small talk." "Knowing what you know." I met her gaze. "I sat for 40 years in meetings with people who embezzled pension funds, who stole from retirees." I smiled. I shook hands. I asked about their families while building cases against them. I can handle a dinner with my son. We moved on to preparing dinner together. Simple pasta, salad, a bottle of red wine that Helen brought. The domesticity felt strange and natural at the same time. Helen stirred the sauce while I cut vegetables. Our shoulders brushed as we passed. The conversation flowed easily. Memories of better times. Careful exchange of pain, moments of genuine laughter. After dinner, as we cleaned the dishes side by side at the sink. Helen turned to me. "Thank you," she said softly, "for letting me be part of this. I know you could have faced it alone." I put down the dishcloth. I'm glad I didn't. We were close, the air between us charged with something that neither of us had felt in years. I leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away. She did not. The kiss was gentle, tentative, carrying both sadness and hope. Two people who had been hurt finding comfort in each other. When we separated, Helen's eyes were shining. "Well," she said with a small smile, "that happened." I touched her face gently. "Is it okay that it happened?" "More than okay," she whispered. We were at my front door later, Helen preparing to walk home. The night air was cool, carrying the scent of early spring growth. "Tomorrow," she said. "Tomorrow," I confirmed. "Dinner with David and Regina. I'll play the worried, slightly confused elderly father. They will try to assess if I am really selling the house." Helen touched my chest lightly, over my heart. "And you will be gathering evidence, watching their reactions, building your case." I covered her hand with mine. "This is who I am. I was. The investigator." "Perhaps," she said. "You just needed the right case, the important one." She stood on tiptoe. She kissed me briefly. "Call me when you get home tomorrow night. Or come over, whatever you need." After she left, I stayed at my door, watching her porch light turn on 3 houses away. My phone vibrated. David. "Looking forward to tomorrow, Dad. We have a lot to discuss." I wrote back, "Me too, son. Me too." I meant it differently than he thought. He wanted to discuss money, manipulation, control. I wanted to see them squirm, gather evidence, see exactly how far they will go. Tomorrow night would tell me everything I needed to know. I locked my door. New locks, new keys. And I walked through my house, checking the security camera feed on my phone. The garage cameras showed an empty space, waiting. Everything was ready. The trap was set. Now, I just had to walk into theirs without getting caught. Friday arrived with the weight of inevitability. I spent the day in careful preparation, not physical, but mental. Reviewing notes from the week, cut brake lines, panic messages from David, the transparent call from Regina. By late afternoon, I was dressed in slacks and a button-down shirt, the uniform of a trusting father. Helen appeared at my door just before I left. "Remember," she said, touching my arm, "you are gathering information, not confronting them. Not yet." I nodded. I kissed her cheek. "I will call you later." The trip to my son's house took 30 minutes. With every mile, I put on my mask. The slightly confused elderly father, slightly lonely who trusts his son. David opened the door before I could knock. He had been watching. "Dad, good to see you." The hug was too strong, held too long, over his shoulder. Regina was in the hall, smile bright and cold as chrome. When I mentioned that I was still driving the rental car because my sedan needed something complicated with the engine and the brakes, I caught it. The brief exchange of glances between them. Recognition, tension, fear. We sat at the dining room table. The same table that contained succession documents earlier this week now displayed careful domesticity. Meatloaf, roasted vegetables, wine at attention. Regina served with practiced efficiency. "I remember you love meatloaf, Arthur." She hadn't called me by my first name in years. The performance was transparent once you knew what to look for. David played the attentive son, refilling my water glass, asking about my week. The conversation was surreal. 3 people eating, 2 planning a murder while pretending normalcy, 1 pretending not to know. I played my part perfectly. The rambling elderly man, grateful for the family attention, a little lonely, a little naive. Halfway through the main course, I deployed my weapon. "You know, I've been thinking a lot about the house. It really is too much for me now. I talked to a real estate agent. They think I could get $480,000. Maybe more. After taxes, about $455,000 clean. They froze. Regina's knuckles went white around her fork. David's smile became tense. I'm thinking of buying a small condo. Maybe $200,000, and use the rest to travel. Europe, Paris, Rome, maybe Alaska too. The atmosphere changed like the drop in air pressure before a storm. Regina recovered first. Arthur, that's a big decision. You shouldn't rush, David added, voice tense. Dad, the house is your life, your memories. You shouldn't sell, I continued, as if I were oblivious. Oh, and I was at my lawyer's office this week. Too, just updating some documents. You know, at my age, you have to think about these things. I said it casually, between bites. The reaction was immediate. Another desperate glance between them. What kind of documents? Regina asked, trying to sound simply curious. I waved a hand vaguely. Estate planning things. Boring legal matters. My lawyer said it's important to keep everything up to date. I didn't go into detail. I let them imagine. They will wonder. They will be terrified. The silence that followed was heavy enough to suffocate. Dessert was rushed. Coffee rejected. David and Regina barely maintained their facades now. When I got up to leave, claiming early fatigue, the relief on their faces was palpable. Drive carefully, Dad, David said. We'll talk soon about the house before you do anything. In the rental car, I watched them in the rearview mirror. The moment my car turned the corner, they rushed inside. I could imagine the conversation. Terrified, angry, desperate. I drove 3 blocks, stopped, and called Helen. It's done, I said. They are terrified. Her voice came warm and worried. Are you okay? I considered it. I'm not sure, but I'm in control. That's what matters. She was silent for a moment. Be careful. Cornered animals are the most dangerous. I knew it. I counted on it. The drive home passed in a blur of streetlights and repeated conversations. David's too strong hug, Regina's forced warmth, the way both tensed when I mentioned the lawyer. When I entered my driveway, my phone showed 2 missed calls from David. No voicemail, just silence and need. I did not return the call. Instead, I walked through my house. New locks, securing every entrance. Security cameras recording every angle of my garage. My phone screens showed empty frames. My sedan sitting intact. Bait waiting. I sent a message to Helen. Home, safe. They are struggling. I could see it in their eyes. Her response was immediate. I'm coming over. By the time she arrived 10 minutes later, I was sitting at my kitchen table with the lights off, staring into nothing. She did not turn on the lights. She just sat next to me in the darkness. She took my hand. Tell me, she said softly. And I did. Not the strategic details, but the human cost. I looked at my son tonight and I saw a stranger. Worse than a stranger. An enemy. My voice cracked slightly. When did I lose him, Helen? When did he stop being my son and become this? She squeezed my hand. You didn't lose him. He chose a path. That's not your fault. We sat in the darkness, 2 people who had survived the betrayal of their children, holding each other's pain, outside. The night settled deeply. Somewhere, David and Regina were plotting their next move, and I, despite the pain in my chest, was ready. Saturday passed with careful normality. I woke up next to Helen. She had stayed overnight, both needing the comfort of not being alone. We shared coffee under the morning sunlight. We talked about nothing important. We let the ordinary routine provide refuge from the storm brewing around us. Early in the afternoon, Helen returned to her house. I decided to go grocery shopping. Milk, bread, the weekly staples that continue regardless of family betrayals and murder plots. The store was full of weekend shoppers. I moved through the aisles on autopilot, my mind elsewhere, repeating Friday's dinner. When I turned onto my street with the grocery bags in the passenger seat, I saw it immediately. David's car in my driveway. He was standing next to my front door, shifting his weight, checking his phone, radiating nervous energy. When I drove in, his head snapped up. "Dad, we have to talk." Not a greeting, a demand. I took my time collecting the grocery bags, using the moments to prepare myself. My heart rate rose, but my hands remained firm. "Of course, son, come in." I opened the door, new locks, new keys that David does not have, and we entered. The house felt different with him inside now, contaminated by his presence. I put the groceries on the kitchen counter. I did not offer coffee or a seat. I waited. David paced the living room. He couldn't stay still. "Dad, I've been thinking about what you said about selling the house." I remained neutral. "Yes," his voice rose. "This house is not just yours. It's the family's. It should stay in the family. Mom lived here. I grew up here. You can't just sell it to strangers." I felt the calculated manipulation, the appeal to sentiment. "It's my house, David. I can do whatever I want with it." His control began to fail. "But what about me? What about your family? Don't I matter?" The acquired right in his voice was evident now, undisguised. "Of course you matter. But I don't understand why you are so worried about what I do with my own property." David stopped pacing. He faced me directly. His face was flushed, his jaw tight. "Because it should be mine. I am your son. I have a right to it." The words floated in the air like smoke from a gunshot. I remained very still. A right? To the property I own? To the money I earned? David realized he had said too much. But he couldn't stop now. "I'm drowning in debt, Dad. $75,000. Regina and I, we can't. We need." He restrained himself. He tried to recover. "We just think you should keep the house. For the family. For the memories." But then, fatally, if everything had gone according to plan, he stopped. His face turned pale. The words faded into the silence. My voice dropped to barely a whisper. "If what had gone according to plan, David?" The question remained between us like a live grenade. David backed toward the door. "Nothing. I didn't. I just meant." I stepped forward. "You meant if I had driven my car last Monday. If the brakes had failed on the highway. If I had died in the accident you organized." His face lost all color. "I didn't. You're not." He couldn't form coherent words. "Get out," I said, voice like ice. David fumbled for the doorknob. He escaped into the afternoon sunlight. His car left burning tires from the driveway. I stood at my door, watching until the car disappeared. Then I closed and locked the door. My hands trembled while I took out my phone. I called Detective Rodriguez. He admitted it. Not directly, but enough. If everything had gone according to plan. He was talking about my death. Rodriguez's voice was sharp, alert. "Did you record it?" I closed my eyes. "No." I didn't expect him to show up. Rodriguez sighed. "It's something, but not enough for an arrest. We need more." After hanging up, I called Helen. She arrived in minutes. She found me sitting on my sofa, shaking. Not from fear, but from the emotional earthquake of hearing my own son essentially confirm that he tried to commit murder. Helen pulled me into her arms. "You're doing the right thing," she murmured. He made his decision, not you. We sat like that for a long time, I finally allowing the tears I had held back all week, Helen holding me through it, saying nothing, just being present. The night settled over the house. Helen had prepared tea that neither of us drinks. We sat together on the sofa, her arm around my shoulders, my head resting on hers. "What happens now?" she asked. My voice was rough from crying. "We wait. Rodriguez has his verbal slip on record, but it's not enough for an arrest. We need more." Helen moved to look at me. "The camera is in the garage. If David tries again..." "If he tries again," I finished. "We will have him on video, and this time I will make sure it's enough to lock him up." My phone vibrated on the coffee table. Both of us looked at it. David's name on the screen. I picked it up. I read the message aloud. "Dad, I'm sorry about today. I'm just worried about you. I care about you." Helen made a sound of disgust. I looked at the words. He really thinks I still believe him, after what he said, after what he did. I wrote a response with deliberate slowness. "We'll talk later. I need time to think." I sent it. I put down the phone. "Aren't you going to confront him?" Helen asked. "Not yet," I said. "Not until I have everything I need. He's going to try again. I know it. And when he does, I'll be ready." Outside, the darkness was complete. The security cameras in my garage recorded an empty space. Waiting. The trap was set. The bait was placed. Now came the hardest part. Patience. Sunday morning arrived with a deceptive calm. I woke up early. The house quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant song of birds. Helen had stayed. We had fallen into an unspoken pattern where neither of us wanted to be alone during the night. She was making coffee when my phone rang. Detective Rodriguez's name on the screen. My stomach contracted. "Mr. Vargas," his voice came sharp with controlled emotion. "The cameras caught something. You need to come to the station." My coffee cup froze halfway to my lips. "When?" "Last night. Early this morning, technically. Around 3:20 in the morning." Helen reached across the table. She took my free hand. I squeezed it back. "I'm on my way." In Rodriguez's office, Helen and I watched the security footage on a monitor. The timestamp read 03:20 in the morning. The garage camera showed darkness. Then the motion-activated recording began. The side door opened. The lock visibly damaged. Forced entry. A figure entered, immediately recognizable. David. Dark clothes, carrying a small toolbox. He approached the sedan. He put down his tools. He opened the driver's side door. His hand went to the steering column. Then, he froze. David's head turned, slowly scanning the garage. He couldn't see the hidden cameras, but something had alerted him. Instinct. Paranoia. The subtle hum of electronic equipment. He stood perfectly still for almost a minute. Then he abruptly closed the car door, grabbed his tools and quickly left. He never touched the brake system, but the intention was crystalline. Rodriguez stopped the playback. "We have delayed trespassing. We have him inside your garage with tools, approaching your vehicle. The same vehicle that was previously sabotaged, combined with the documentation of the original brake line cut. His verbal admission yesterday about if everything had gone according to plan and the financial motive." He looked at me directly. "This is enough for an arrest warrant. Attempted murder, delayed trespassing, possibly conspiracy if we can link his wife. But I need to ask you directly. Are you prepared to press charges against your son? Once we do this, there's no going back." I sat in silence, looking at the frozen image on the screen. David's face trapped in the harsh infrared light. Tense and guilty expression. Helen's hand was warm in mine. I thought about David as a child, learning to ride a bicycle, graduating from high school, getting married. Then, I thought about the cut brake lines, about sitting down for dinner on Friday, pretending not to know that my son wants me dead. About the $75,000 in debt that somehow became more important than a father's life. Yes, I said finally, voice firm. I'm ready to press charges. Rodriguez nodded. He picked up his phone. I'll get the warrant. Early in the afternoon, Rodriguez called. We picked him up at his workplace. He is in custody. I was back home, Helen next to me on the sofa. I expected to feel satisfaction, vindication, something. Instead, there was only emptiness. What happens now? Arraignment hearing on Monday. Given the attempted murder of a family member, bail will be high if granted at all. His lawyer will probably push for a plea deal. After hanging up, I sat motionless. Helen asked if I was okay. I didn't know how to answer. The phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. Regina's voice exploded through the speaker. You had him arrested. Your own son. What kind of father are you? Her voice was shrill, on the verge of hysteria. Years of careful manipulation stripped away, leaving raw fury. He tried to kill me, Regina. Twice. It's on video. She did not address this. You're destroying his life. Our life? Why? Money? Because he asked for help? My voice dropped to ice. He cut my brake lines and broke into my garage with tools to do it again. The police have evidence. Do you want advice? Get a good lawyer. For yourself, too, if you were involved. I ended the call. I blocked both numbers. Helen watched me. She didn't say anything. We moved to the back porch. We sat in the sunset light. She took my hand. I finally exhaled properly for the first time in a week. The sun set in shades of orange and pink, unusually warm for early March. We sat without talking, watching the light fade from the sky. My phone lay on the small table between our chairs, silent now. David's and Regina's numbers blocked. That chapter forcibly closed. Helen broke the silence softly. Tomorrow you will have to testify at the hearing. Are you ready? I considered it. I don't know if anyone is ready to testify against their own child, but I will do it. I will tell the truth. She nodded. She didn't press. Somewhere in the city, David was sitting in a detention cell, beginning to understand the consequences. Somewhere else, Regina was probably calling lawyers, calculating her exit strategy, planning how to distance herself from her incarcerated husband. But here, on this porch, I felt something I hadn't felt since Monday night when my car didn't start. Peace, not happiness. The wound was too recent for that. But peace, the knowledge that I was safe, that justice was moving forward, that I didn't have to look over my shoulder anymore. Helen got up. She offered her hand. Come inside. I'll prepare dinner, something simple. I took her hand, letting her pull me up. Through the window I could see my kitchen, warm light, familiar space now shared with someone who understands betrayal and survived it. Who is teaching me that survival is not only about security, but about choosing to live fully after almost losing everything. We walked in together, leaving the nightfall behind, ready to face what tomorrow brings. The week following David's arrest passed in a blur of legal proceedings. Monday's hearing. David entered the courtroom in an orange jumpsuit and handcuffs. He would not look me in the eyes. Bail denied due to the severity and risk of flight. His public defender immediately began negotiating. By Wednesday, a plea deal was offered. I met with the prosecutor, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s, who laid out the options. First-degree attempted murder carries 20 years. But proving premeditation to a jury is uncertain, even with your evidence. Your son's lawyer is pushing for a deal. Assault with intent to cause serious bodily harm, plus breaking and entering, 6 years in total. Eligible for parole in 4 with good behavior. She watched my face. It's your decision. We can take him to trial if you want. I thought about months of testimony, reliving everything publicly. I thought about Helen, about moving forward. Accept the deal, I said. 6 years is enough. The courtroom was small, wood-paneled, illuminated with fluorescence. I sat in the gallery, Helen next to me, her hand in mine. The prosecutor presented the plea deal. David stood before the judge. Shoulders slumped, diminished, the judge asked, "Mr. Vargas, do you understand that you are pleading guilty to assault with intent to cause serious bodily harm and breaking and entering?" David's voice was barely audible. "Yes, Your Honor." "And do you understand that the sentence is 6 years in state prison, with the possibility of parole after 4 years?" "Yes." The judge signed the papers. "So ordered." That was all. 2 minutes to conclude a relationship that spanned 35 years. Before the marshals took David away, he turned. His eyes finally found mine in the gallery. For a long moment, father and son looked at each other across the division of the courtroom. I did not see anger on David's face. No defiance, only emptiness. And perhaps, under that emptiness, something that could be a belated understanding. David's mouth moved. "I'm sorry." The words were low enough that only those nearby heard them. I nodded once. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation, just recognition that the words were said. Then, David was led through the side door, and he was gone. Outside the courtroom, the prosecutor took me aside. We couldn't build a case against the wife. No direct evidence of participation. She has filed for divorce. She is already moving to another state, essentially abandoning him. I was not surprised. Regina was always about money, about getting ahead. A husband in prison did not serve any of those purposes. "Will she try to contact me?" The prosecutor shook her head. "The restraining order is still in effect. She knows she must stay away." One more loose end tied. One more threat neutralized. A month later, the April sun warmed the park next to the lake. Helen and I walked the trail around the water, fingers intertwined. She had moved in permanently, her house sold. Her belongings merged with mine. The combined home felt good, natural, as if we had been doing this for years instead of weeks. We were planning a summer wedding, nothing elaborate, just close friends and Helen's sister. The ceremony would be in her friend's garden, intimate and genuine. I had changed my will for the 3rd time, half to the City Children's Hospital Foundation, half to Helen. The house that David wanted so desperately now belonged to a man who had learned to share it, to fill it with laughter and music and life instead of lonely silence. Back home that afternoon, I found an envelope in the mailbox, postmarked from the prison, David's handwriting. I stared at it for a long moment. Then I took it inside. Helen saw it. She did not ask questions. At the kitchen table, I held the unopened letter. He wrote to me. Helen put down her tea. "Do you want to read it?" I turned the envelope in my hands. Not now. Maybe someday. But not today. I opened a kitchen drawer. I placed the letter inside. I closed it. Today is for living, for us, for the future. Helen smiled. She took my hand across the table. "Then let's go for that walk we planned. The afternoon is beautiful." We left the house hand in hand. 2 people in their 60s who had survived the worst betrayals of their children and had found unexpected second chances in love and trust. The letter lay in the drawer. waiting for a day that may or may not come. But today, life called louder than the past. The park path meandered between newly sprouted trees. The lake reflected the sunset colors like melted copper. Other couples walked past, some young, others older, all absorbed in their own worlds. Helen and I moved at an easy pace, unhurried, nowhere to go but here. "Do you think about him?" Helen asked after a comfortable silence. I considered it. "Sometimes. Mostly I wonder when he changed, when he stopped being my son and became someone who could do that." I squeezed her hand. "But thinking about it doesn't change anything. He made his decisions. Now he lives with them." Helen nodded. "And you? What are you living with?" I stopped walking. I turned to look at her directly. The setting sun illuminated her silver hair, her open and kind face. "I am living with you, with the possibility of happiness that I thought I had lost forever, with the understanding that family is not always blood. Sometimes it is the person who is by your side when everything falls apart." She stood on tiptoe, kissed me gently. "Good answer." We continued our walk, circling back toward home as the twilight deepened. In the kitchen drawer, David's letter lay unopened, his words frozen in time, waiting for a moment that may never come. But out here, in the living world, I walked hand in hand with Helen, two people who had earned their second chance through survival and courage, and the willingness to trust again. The house ahead showed lights in the windows. Our home now, filled with shared meals and conversation, and the quiet comfort of companionship. Justice had been done. Security had been assured. And most importantly, improbably, life had become worth living again. Not despite the betrayal, but because I chose to survive it. To fight with truth and law rather than bitterness, and to accept love when it appeared after all. The afternoon air brought the scent of spring flowers. Somewhere a bird sang its last notes before nightfall. And I, Arthur Vargas, 63 years old, retired auditor, survivor of my son's attempted murder, walked toward home with the woman I love, ready for what tomorrow brings.